This is from Courtiers, The Secret History of Kensington Palace. It's 1737 and Queen Caroline is suffering from an umbilical hernia. George II's initial wooing of Caroline had been shrouded in romance and mystery. He'd made a midnight journey in disguise to Zell in Germany in order to spy on the beautiful blonde princess as she passed through the town on a journey of her own. Having set eyes upon Caroline, he was overwhelmed with desire and found himself most eager to marry her without delay. Caroline was surprised and agitated when she received the envoy bearing his marriage offer on the 22nd of June 1705. But she soon composed herself to accept. The whole affair, which had hitherto been concealed with so much care, was finally made public, and their betrothal was widely celebrated. Caroline's lover wrote to her with passion, "I desire nothing so much as to throw myself at my princess's feet and offer her eternal devotion. Madam, you alone can make me happy." And in some sense, this was still true over 30 years later. For despite his infidelities, his sulks, his casual cruelties, this king still loved his queen. Now it was the writer of those love letters, the easiest, the most natural, the warmest of men, who fell in love with his wife once again as she lay sick. From the first moment of her illness, he devoted himself to Caroline's care with surprising constancy. When Caroline's illness was at last successfully diagnosed in November 1737, her doctors made a terrible mistake. A mortified or decayed part of her bowel was by now poking out through the wall of her stomach. The Royal Society had recently approved the surgeon Mr. Stewart's book entitled New Discoveries and Improvements in that Most Considerable Branches of Anatomy and Surgery, which included ruptures of all kinds cured without cutting. The doctors should really have pushed that bowel back inside and sewn up the hole. Instead, they cut it off. Her late father-in-law had been accustomed to call Caroline that devil woman, the princess, a description that hints at the steely soul hidden inside her plump exterior. And Caroline's tenacity, resignation and resolution during the terrible days that followed were spectacular. She now underwent almost daily surgery in her bedchamber, under the knife of Dr. John Ranby and his assistant, without the benefit of opium. The energetic Dr. Ranby sometimes had to change his hat and waistcoat halfway through an operation because he'd soaked them in sweat. Caroline bravely cracked jokes before he began work each day. "Before you begin, let me have a full view of your comical face," she'd say to Dr. Ranby. And while his blade went in, she'd ask, "What would you give now that you was cutting your wife?"